Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're headed now into the afternoon program, and we have a lot of great people to hear from ahead of us. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Dr. Laura Nelson, who is the Energy Advisor for the Governor of Utah. She heads the Governor's Office of Energy Development. She was appointed Energy Advisor by Governor Gary R. Herbert in May 2016. She also continues to serve as the Executive Director of the Office of Energy Development, as I mentioned, a position she's held since 2014. And prior to that, she served as Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Potash Ridge Corporation, also the Vice President of Energy and Environmental Development for Red Leaf Resources, and the Energy Advisor for Utah Governor Jon Huntsman. For 2 decades, she's been proactive in defining and supporting balanced and sustainable energy solutions, including providing congressional testimony, participating in regional collaborations, working with counties and cities, and coordinating across diverse stakeholders to deliver positive policy, regulatory, and commercial results. And I know that she recently spoke at the C3E conference in Fort Collins, Colorado. And that's a great active group, and I'm so pleased that she had an introduction to C3E that way. Her talk is entitled Energy Innovation and an Unprecedented Opportunity to Lead. So join me in welcoming Laura to the stage.
Martha, thank you so much for that great introduction. It's just really a great honor to be with all of you here today. As I heard another speaker earlier mention, and I apologize, I don't know which one it is to provide the attributions, that it's different when you walk up here and you look out over really this sea of phenomenal women in different parts of their career doing really truly amazing things. And you know, I titled my slides today, or I guess my presentation to you all, as Energy Innovation, an Unprecedented Opportunity to Lead, because I really do think that these are unprecedented times. And I think the role that C3E plays in elevating women's position in these unprecedented times is really key, because it is a transformative period across our energy space, and certainly within our energy infrastructure, as we look at how we're going to define the energy solutions, not just for tomorrow, but also today. We have to be present in everything we do if we in fact want to deliver on the promise of energy. I also want to recognize that it's great to be here at MIT. Just absolutely renowned for driving technology and innovation, and having a conversation at all levels of education that are provided here, whether it's folks that just want to do a minor in energy-related topics, or they want to do an undergraduate or a graduate degree, or all of the advanced research and the partnerships. And I think that's a real example for what we can do, and certainly C3E invokes that across women, bringing together women in policy, women in business, and women who are engaged in technology. So what a tremendous partnership with MIT. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here. This is an incredible time in energy, and those of you who have heard me speak before, I know a few faces around the room, have heard me say that there's never been a more exciting time to be in energy. And I've been doing it for, I say 20 years, it may be longer than that, but maybe I just don't want to admit it. And I've said it every year that I've been doing it, and it is certainly more true all of the time. And it seems challenging. It does seem challenging, that not just the pace of change, but the issues that we have to address. And so I want to first kind of have this really positive message, because I think it's an important one about our country, about America and this place that we live, and the opportunities that are afforded to us. We have had challenges as a nation, and we have consistently come forward with innovation. Even if you look at our mode of government, federalism is really unprecedented globally. And within that framework, there's an opportunity for states, for individuals to provide leadership to drive change and outcomes. And that is demonstrated by all of the things that we've seen happening in energy, bringing on new innovations in wind energy and solar, in battery and other storage technologies, in addressing carbon capture and sequestration. I had the opportunity to tour all of these posters out here, and I was just impressed, covering the spectrum of the energy-rich resources that we have here in our country, and that our system really allows us the opportunity to have these conversations, which it sometimes can be difficult, but they are certainly the most important conversations that we have, because in addressing these challenges, we find opportunities. So it's very important to have the dialogue, even if sometimes we disagree, because opportunity and transformation, I truly believe, comes through the conversations that we have that drive us to act and be part of something that's really bigger than ourselves. So with that, I'm going to integrate a little bit about what I do and where I work, so that you all get a picture of what I think are some of the big picture items and some of the critical path items that we have to address, and the really important role of leadership and why I think it's an unprecedented time for leadership. And I have to first of all say that I am very fortunate to have a terrific boss. My boss, Governor Gary R. Herbert, is truly a visionary and a leader. When he came into office in 2010, he made energy one of the cornerstones of his administration. It was energy, education, economic development, and self-determination. And that self-determination piece is an important part because it is about taking personal responsibility, taking state responsibility to drive the changes that we want for a better future. On the energy space, he said, we've got to do this right, and we've got one shot to make sure that we're planning for the future that we want to have. He is also fond of saying that fail to plan, plan to fail. So we do plan in Utah, and not only do we plan, but we also act. And he believes that we can't do it alone, either as individuals or as a state. So in order to realize outcomes, we really have to form what he likes to call unprecedented partnerships to drive unparalleled outcomes. And that's what we're really about. That frames and shapes, provides a context, if you will, for the things that we are doing in Utah. So Utahns are pretty engaged in what's happening in the energy space in Utah, and they've been very specific about what they want for their energy future. And you heard, I think, earlier today from Marcy from National Grid about some of the changes that are occurring. Customers want more hands-on experience with their energy on what we call maybe their side of the meter. Okay, on the side where they're using energy, they want more controls around how they experience energy and productivity in their households and their businesses. And we're seeing the same thing in Utah. People want more choice around their energy options. They want more control around those energy options. And a couple of years ago, Utah embarked on, I think, the most expansive survey to ask Utahns what they wanted for their future. And it covered a number of topics: water, education, healthcare, economic growth. And this was an important study for a very key reason. Utah's population is set to double in about the next 25 years. And so we're going to have to, again, back to this planning dynamic, we're going to have to plan and engage in actions that are going to position us to meet that growing population and address the impacts of that growing population. And this is what Utahns said. 53,000 Utahns responded to this survey. Again, an incredible number of people, and to my knowledge, no other statewide survey has received such a response. And Utahns have this vision. We want affordable energy. That's important to driving our economic growth and providing a quality of life that allows us access to other elements of our life, whether it's healthcare, whether it's food, whether it's recreation. And so affordable energy continues to be a top priority for Utahns. We are typically about between the 5th and 8th lowest in energy prices in the country. So affordability is key. But at the same time, I mentioned that, they want more hands-on, they want more choice. And so as we drive this affordability, we have to take into consideration the fact that Utahns also increasingly want more choice about their energy resources. They want it to be cleaner, they want it to be more sustainable. And as we progress and move forward, we have to take into consideration what they want. That's going to drive the quality of life that we in Utah enjoy. And I want to just highlight that, the importance of this conversation that we're having here today cannot be understated. And the governor in Utah, Governor Herbert, has recognized the importance of having these energy conversations. For the last 6 years, so since 2011, I believe, was the first energy summit that he launched. He wanted to bring people together. His vision was, I don't want to just come together and have a feel good about energy. I want people to come together and have a conversation about how we need to innovate when it comes to technology, how we need to innovate when it comes to policy, and how we need to innovate when it comes to our business models. All the things that you all are talking about here. But I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Governor Herbert has valued this type of conversation and this type of venue since really he came into office, and annually host an energy summit. And of course, I'm going to invite all of you to attend. He's going to hold his next one May 15th of next year. And, C3E, I think, is building this conversation not just in this room. I did have the opportunity, as Martha mentioned, to speak in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and there was I call her young, she's younger than me, Judy Dorsey, that I met, that really started that C3E conversation in Colorado and built that platform in Colorado through and because of her engagement with the terrific women that she met through the online platform and through the online conversations. And so we can continue to do that. We can continue to build this conversation locally, regionally, and I believe also globally. So when we look at how we're going to advance Utah's energy economy, I mentioned these key areas, policy, business models, and technological innovation. And each of our core areas of how we advance this focus on that. We have a core focus on policy and advancing policy at the state and also at the federal level to allow for an informed conversation about energy and the importance of, in Utah, it is an all-of-the-above approach to energy, so looking at all resources. We don't believe in picking and choosing the right resource mix, but we do believe in driving the best outcomes for our environment and for our economy as we look at those resources. So that motivates us as we consider policy options. We also think that when we look at some of these new technologies, that bridging the gap between research and development and demonstration and ultimately commercialization is challenging. So how can we incentivize and provide grants for the innovations that are taking place in the energy space? And I know, Sarah, DOE has been just phenomenal in driving some of the innovations that we're seeing that are important to our state. One of those, it happens to be the NuScale technology, which is a nuclear technology, which is going to be built outside of our state, but going to provide energy to customers in the state of Utah. So bridging that gap on these new innovations is critical in those new business models that I mentioned. And then finally, when we talk about the overall conversation and the importance of education and developing the workforce for the future, we're very, very committed to driving new conversations and new platforms in that space as well. In fact, we've launched a significant education campaign over the last 2 years. We have an online platform with 18 lesson plans for students K through 12. We offer an energy education scholarship for the first time in the state's history, sponsored by Chevron, so through an unprecedented partnership with Chevron, we're able to offer that. And we are offering also significant grants at the university level through another partnership we have, which is the Utah Science, Technology, and Research Initiative, which is focused on undergraduate, graduate studies, and also professorial studies in our research institutions and causing them to come together so that they're not acting in silos. In fact, one of the conditions is that the professors have to work together across different research universities, because it's really easy to have a conversation with yourself and go down a path and not realize that maybe there's a value that someone else has already produced that can bring greater potential to what you're pursuing. So we've been really blessed, I think was a word that was used earlier today, with the opportunity to have these education initiatives that are moving forward in Utah. So we are, I think, driving these unprecedented outcomes in an unprecedented time in Utah. And I know that's what you all are doing here today. And I thought, you know, what am I going to say to all of you? In fact, I was talking to a couple of my friends that I've met previously just before I came up today. And I asked, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to say to you? And I thought, you know, maybe I'd just tell you a little bit about my path to get where I am, doing what I'm doing here today, and why I think it's so incredibly important, because each of us has our own story. And I think it's remarkable how much our story can shape what we pursue and what we see as the potential in our lives. When I was at the conference in Fort Collins a couple of weeks ago, I said, well, I won't start with when I was born, but I'll come pretty close. My parents were the first generation to go to college and get an advanced degree. They were predominantly from rural families, from farming families, so really bridging that rural-urban divide. And it's challenging. It is challenging. My brothers and sisters are the first generation in my family living beyond what I call that bridge. But my parents recognized that getting an education that was STEM-based, I wouldn't say they used that acronym at the time, was very important, and it was going to be important for their children to do the same. So my dad pursued a degree in mathematics and computer science at a time when people said, why are you doing computer science? That's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so keep that in mind. Similarly, my mother pursued her education in nursing, ultimately earning a PhD in nursing at a time when women did not pursue advanced degrees, and became a leader in fundamental philosophy around childbirth, Lamaze. So some people may be familiar with that, but it really changed the way that we engage as women when we're having children. And so my parents were a great example for me. And I witnessed, you know, a little bit of emotional earlier, because our paths are emotional, and they're an important part of the story and why we do what we do today. But I also want to say that the other thing that my parents were really fond of was art. Now, to my dad, art was country and Western music, so you can have your opinion about that. For my mom, it was ballet and Impressionism. So we couldn't afford, you know, an original Monet or anything like that, of course, but we had definitely very nice frame prints around our house, and my mom made it a priority to talk to us about the finer arts. And so I today really believe that it is the STEAM education, the science, the technology, the engineering, the art, and the math that can drive the conversations that are going to affect change. So when I was 12, you thought I was done with my childhood, my family took a trip to Utah, and this is another story I've shared because it's so dear to me, and one of the probably the most impactful occurrences in my life. We took a trip to the Grand Canyon is really where we were going, and I just thought, this is phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it before. I mean, there was a movie made called Grand Canyon, right? As some of you may remember that movie, but it really reflected on the fact that this is such an incredible natural occurrence that it will change your life. Well, it did. And I said, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life. And my parents then drove up into Utah to visit some of the parks there, and then ultimately into Salt Lake City. And I just thought, this is incredible. I've never seen such beautiful space and spaces in my life. And this is where I'm going to live when I grow up. I was pretty narrow in my commitments as a child. I'm not sure that my parents really believed me, but they knew when I said I was going to do something that the probability was quite high that I would. It was never a question about whether or not I would go to college. It probably was expected that I'd apply to many colleges. I did not. I applied to one college, the University of Utah, to pursue a career in acting. So I was, of course, very thrilled to be accepted into the School of Theater at the time. It was a limited program. I think they accepted about 33 students a year. But I have to tell you, within a year, I felt complete in that endeavor. I felt like this isn't getting me where I want. And the sense that I can tell you that I had was I didn't feel an opportunity to create something that was bigger than myself. I thought, what is this going to mean to the world? And I don't mean that in an egotistical way at all, but I think it's important as we think about, and it isn't that theater or acting can't do those things. We won't talk about what's happening today. But you know, there is a way that you create your own voice, and that wasn't doing it for me. I also happen to have a forced by my dad, love of mathematics. And I thought, well, if acting doesn't work out, then I can consider a degree in mathematics. I didn't want to do pure math, so instead I pursued economics. And in particular, I pursued environmental economics, I think in part driven by the fact that I'd had this incredible experience when I was 12. And so as an undergraduate, I studied environmental economics, and I was very concerned, I would say, about what is the optimal path for the utilization of our natural resources. I'm a micro-based economist, if you know what that means. I'm pretty mainstream economist, so I really thought, how can we find market-based solutions to drive environmental outcomes? And, when I began this process, I really saw these environmental outcomes in a way connected to industry in a holistic way, definitely a connection to energy. But as I pursued my studies, and let me just give you a little bit of context. This was in the time, some of you may remember this, of the Meadows Limits to Growth, okay? It was at a time when concerns about climate change were little baby seeds, okay, just little tiny seeds, and talking about them, people were like, okay, whatever, that's probably not going anywhere, okay? And it was also a time of peak oil, if any of you remember that. So that's a little bit of the context, which shaped my concern. And there are trends that are going on today that are shaping our concerns. And I stepped back and I looked at all of these things that are going on, and I said, you know what? Environmental outcomes are just so intricately linked to the decisions we make in our energy space. And I think that was the point at which I would say I became what I consider myself today, which is really an energy economist, an energy policy advocate, if you will, and an advocate for sustainable, reliable, clean energy solutions. Because it's through energy, I think, that we can access realization of our higher cultural values, our higher social values. I saw one of the posters out there which is about bringing cook stoves, right, globally, because there are people who still don't have energy to provide them clean heating for their food, clean cooking technologies, not to mention the role that energy plays in providing clean water and just an overall quality of life. So I guess I would say what I did is I pursued ultimately what I found the most interesting to me, but I also will say where I thought there was an opportunity to add value to a conversation around what at the time I thought were the most challenging questions that were facing us nationally and globally. The interesting thing, I think, as I step back, is that these are still some of the most challenging questions that are facing us locally in our homes. I mean, certainly in your communities, in your states, you have low-income people that have limited access to energy. regionally, as we look at integrating new resources, how is that going to impact grid reliability, resiliency, and affordability nationally, and of course, globally, where we have 1 billion people in the world still who don't have reliable or any access to energy. So I really feel that I have this commitment to energy, to the environment. I believe that, in fact, they are inseparable and that we can continue to drive solutions that will help us to realize these positive outcomes that I think we're experiencing today. And so I'm going to go back a little bit to talking about Utah, because this is the place where it's occurring for me. It may be occurring for you in different places, but this is the place where I experience on a day-to-day basis and where I try to drive changes and influence changes and work with the great people that I have the opportunity to work with, whether it's my governor, my staff, the citizens of Utah, and many of you in this room, and if I haven't worked with you, I hope I will have the opportunity in the future. But that's my context, that's where I live, and so I do want to talk about some of the things that we're doing in Utah. Our energy mix is changing in Utah. About a decade ago, roughly 90% of our energy consumption was coal-based. Utah is a natural resource-rich state. We have everything. If you want to kind of throw out some energy resources at me and see whether we have them, I bet you the answer is going to be yes. We have it. We've got it. But coal really was the backbone of our economy for a long time, providing that affordable, reliable energy that allowed the rest of our economy to grow. But we still had some challenges. Of course, we had environmental issues that we had to address. And this is one of the things I think, I go back to my opening statement about America, where we've always addressed these challenges through innovation. And we said, we're learning more about how we use our energy resources. And we also understand that diversity within our energy mix is going to be critical going forward, because just like as an investor, you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket. Why would you rely on only one energy resource for your future? Why would you choose to just have one option? So our energy system has continued to evolve. And I'm going to go back to another bit of my story as I hopefully weave it in with this part of my story. When I was doing economics and environmental energy economics, and I got a PhD, I thought I was going to go into academics. I thought I would be a professor. Instead, I went into regulation, utility regulation, after working in academics for about 5 years. And my first case in regulation, and again, some of you may have heard me say this, was depreciation. It was a depreciation case around energy assets. Well, that didn't discourage me. I thought that there is a great opportunity within this space to affect change. So Utah, at that time, I had the great opportunity to introduce what became known as the Blue Sky Program, which was the first green tariff in Utah. I also had an opportunity to provide guidance and testimony on the importance of energy efficiency as a cost-effective resource, and the importance of diversifying our portfolio through the integrated resource plan. And I certainly am not going to take credit for all of that, but I will tell you, or any of it, I'm just thrilled that I got to be part of the conversation, that I had an opportunity to do some of the things that I did. But that was the time during which, roughly 90% of our consumption came from coal, and a recognition that the world was really changing and that we needed to change with it. And we needed to put the tools in the hands of customers and citizens to make decisions that were going to be important to their lives going forward. And I will say, at the time, when I was participating in energy efficiency conversations, on a good day, about 8 people would show up. Today, it's a packed room, just like we see here today. And so where we are in Utah today is a part of our past. It's also a part of where we are and where we plan to go. So wind with battery backup storage, net zero communities. We cut the ribbon on our first net zero community just this year. Large utility scale solar. We brought in 752 megawatts of new solar energy just in about the last year, along with another 60 megawatts of new utility scale wind. We're really looking at transmission and regionalization. We're not fans, I'm not going to say fans of it yet, because we want to understand what are the benefits to Utah, to its customers, to its resources of pursuing this innovation around how we operate and plan for our transmission system. And electric vehicles and buses. And these are just a few. We recently entered into an 8-state MOU to advance electric vehicle infrastructure across 8 states so that if you have an electric vehicle, you won't have range anxiety, and you'll be more inclined to purchase that vehicle and provide zero emissions to our airshed as you're touring our many beautiful states for recreational purposes and otherwise. So we, I think, are doing what we're talking about. We are looking to provide that affordable, robust, resilient, clean energy future in Utah. So innovation is, as I mentioned, at the cornerstone of this. And I'm going to tell another little personal story about myself. When I came to work for Governor Huntsman, which Martha mentioned, in 2005, at the time I had moved from my regulatory position in Utah to working as a policy advisor to the Public Utility Commission in Idaho, a job that I absolutely loved. I thought there's no way I'm ever leaving this job. It's the best job I've ever had. Within a year, I got a call from some friends of mine back in Utah, and they said, would you be interested in moving back here? Governor Huntsman is looking for an energy advisor. In fact, he is dismantling the way that we look at energy, and he's creating a whole new structure, and he wants to have an energy advisor to lead all of this. And I thought, well, first of all, I was surprised that I got the call, and not certain that I could meet the task. But I wanted to try. It was something that I really felt was a challenge. I did not think I was the best person for the job. I'm not going to even say that I did, but I had to convince myself that I could do it. And so I said, yes, I'm happy to consider it. And I was the only person. There were 5 candidates that were interviewed. I was the only one that was actually interviewed from out of state, and I was, in fact, the only woman. And so when I went in for the interview, I felt really I needed to be prepared. And so I spent some time looking at Utah's energy mix. What are our opportunities? What are our challenges? And I wanted to put together my ideas around how we could leverage those resources to create a more robust energy future for Utah. And I knew that I had to do this in a very concise way. I had a short meeting with a governor who's got a lot on his plate. So I had to try to do this in 3 pictures or less. So I put together this nice little trifold slide presentation for Governor Huntsman. I went into the meeting, and I was just so excited to be there. He's an incredible presence. He's a brilliant man, and a little bit intimidating when you first meet him to walk in the room, but certainly one of the most gracious people I know. And so he starts out by asking me, questions like who I am, what I'll call the resume questions. And so I answered the resume questions, and then he was done. He said, well, thanks for coming in. And I had this trifold sitting in front of me, and I thought, well, okay. And then he said something that was very important to me. He said, do you have any questions you want to ask me? And I said, yes, and I do, in fact. I have a couple questions I want to ask you. The importance of responding when someone asks you if you've got a question. I said, first of all, is it true that the Ramones are your favorite band? And he said, yes, it is. And how did you know? Well, I happened to read an article in one of our local newspapers when he was running for governor that talked about his days as a rock star. We'll call it a rock star, but when he was pursuing his rock band career, and the influence of the Ramones. And I said, well, the Ramones are my favorite band. And so we talked about this great punk rock anthology. Again, I mean, the reason I bring this up, because embrace your story and who you are as an individual, because it really is important to how you see opportunities. And so we had this great conversation. And then I said, well, and I do have one more question. And he said, okay, what is it? And I said, would you mind if I shared with you my vision for Utah's energy future? And he said, not at all. So we went through the little trifold I'd given him, and I believe it was by the time I got to the airport to fly back home that they called and said, essentially, how soon can you start? And I said, well, you know, I was just taking a personal day today. I need a little time to go back and get things in order. But a month later, I went to work for Governor John Huntsman, now Ambassador Huntsman, twice ambassador, 3 times ambassador, currently ambassador to Russia. And he certainly was a visionary, and I had a great opportunity to be part of that. And he created an organization, as I mentioned earlier, the Utah Science, Technology, and Research Initiative, where they have a cornerstone that is focused on energy innovation. And a lot of what you see up here is because of his vision around innovation, his vision around energy, and today the great opportunity we have to leverage that and create new solutions, whether it's looking at carbon capture and sequestration that can be applied to both coal and natural gas, whether it's looking at window tinting, which will be important to ever increasing our building energy efficiency. In fact, today transportation is the #1 emissions challenge in Utah. In 10 years, it's going to be buildings. And so we're going to have to address efficiency in buildings, and that's a top priority for us, so driving research in that space. And then we also have this great institution at the University of Utah called the Energy and Geosciences Institute, and they have been engaged in very deliberate geothermal research for over a decade, applying technologies that are used in oil and gas to the development of a vast geothermal resource in Utah. And today, we are one of 2 locations being considered for a national lab. Of course, I think we'd be the best place, but we bring years of experience and commitment, but it is a part of our resource. And the reason I bring this up is because there's an important to our history that we can leverage. There's an important to the results that we create today to drive change tomorrow. And so I'm just really thrilled that I had the opportunity to be at the seat, have a seat, I like to say maybe on the bus, in the electric vehicle, whatever, in being part of these conversations and this change. So why does all this matter? Well, I started off the conversation today by saying that really this isn't just about what we do locally, it's not just about what we do regionally, it really has global implications. Energy is not just a local issue. I like to say act locally, perform globally, because that's what it is going to take. People look at Utah and they think we're a conservative state. We don't have a renewable portfolio standard. But we do have a goal for greenhouse gas reductions established in statute in 2008. We did oppose the Clean Power Plan for a variety of legal reasons, and because we felt that we were already on a path to realizing greenhouse gas reductions across all sources, and we didn't want to be derailed from that program and through that process. So in fact, since 2008, many people are surprised to find this out, Utah has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by 14%. Without, so in less than 10 years, without mandates and without a renewable portfolio standard. We are committed to markets. We're committed to realizing those innovative technologies coming to commercialization through market-based incentives, and we do believe that new business models are emerging, and you heard some of those today from the young woman who received the award in finance, and I apologize, I can't remember her name right now. I think I have it written down here, but I can't see it. But, you know, really what is being driven here is change across the board, policy, business models, and technology, and bringing all those things together to be part of what matters locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. So I want to just conclude today, and I'm going to put on my glasses now because I am motivated to continue to do the work that I do. I mentioned the great people that I have an opportunity to work with, and I really couldn't do it without the great team that I have, without the governor I have, without the great women that I have the opportunity to work with, whether they are my mentors, and I do have many. Never resist having a mentor or being a mentor, because they will be so influential in your life. And I'm just so impressed with all of you that are here. But I want to mention that there are women out there that continue to set the standard. Of course, all of you do. A couple of that have been influential to me personally. I have to talk about them maybe as a couple, but certainly Bill and Melinda Gates and what they're doing, with this notion about how we can bring prosperity to nations that historically have not experienced it, and recognizing the importance of energy through technologies and their breakthrough ventures, and then their mission innovation, which is an innovative way for finance. So again, it's bridging the policy, education, technology, and finance to generate those new results. And I'm mentioning these two examples for a reason. The first one is really kind of a private sector-driven initiative. But I think, and I'm not saying this because DOE is here, but I am saying it because we do have a responsibility as a nation to continue to be part of driving innovative change. And I recently listened in on a committee of the Natural Resources Committee that Senator Lisa Murkowski chairs, and I do want to highlight what she said and highlight her as a leader in this space, because what I think what she said, and this was just this past year, July 22nd, 2017, where some of you may recall they were talking about DOE's budget and what this means going forward, and I think she said something that's very important, and so I wrote it down. I keep it with me, and I brought it with me today. And this is mostly what she said. I might have changed it only ever so slightly. I understand and appreciate the need to derive savings and balance of our budgets. This cannot come at the expense of our efforts to further science and energy innovation. We need to work together to find areas of agreement and opportunities to ensure the next generation of energy technologies is developed here. So I think even at the highest levels, a recognition that we've got to invest, for sure, in our future, in policies, in people, in technology. And I passionately and personally believe that women have a unique role to play in continuing the evolving global conversation and bringing about the new energy solutions that will drive tomorrow's economy while protecting our environment and also our social values. So thank you very much. Do I have time for questions? Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions. I got it down to 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes to take questions now. Okay. Yes. Hi. You're not allowed to ask me a question. Hi, Wendelin.
Hi. Should I wait for a mic? Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, great. Laura, you've done a fantastic job painting a really impressive picture of your state as being very forward-looking, including clean energy and policies on the tech, the finance, and the policy side, sort of the three legs of the stool. And you've done all this under conservative leadership. You've done this in a very red state. There might be some folks in the room who might be of the opinion that clean energy electrons are Democrats and dirty energy electrons are Republicans. And I wonder how you might offer some advice to maybe some folks who are part of the new administration or who see sort of a gap that needs to be bridged between liberals and conservatives when talking about clean energy. I think you were very brave and used the CC word, the climate change word. I think that was definitely noteworthy. But I wonder if you could give us some insight on sort of how you address clean energy, climate change, pollution within the conservative context.
That's a great question. Well, I think that we often think about when we've got to address more conservative philosophies that we have to rely on conversations around energy resiliency, energy reliability, and energy security nationally. And I think the very next natural step to that is that none of that occurs absent consideration for impacts on our environment and how we manage and mitigate those impacts. So it is important to start a conversation I think, with where we can have agreement, because there are going to be diverse worldviews. But find that point and then begin the dialogue, because I think that ultimately you're going to find that the nexus of issues is going to be revealed, I'll say. I've spoken about this a few times recently, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it here. We had a net metering issue, so an issue around how we were going to credit rooftop solar in Utah that presented as if it would be very contentious. The governor convened all of the parties to come together and have a dialogue. I can guarantee you that everybody in the room had a different perspective on what the right outcome was and the reasons that they were in the room. But I absolutely think that this was a case of, neurons driving electrons, that people coming together to think about what they were saying, about where they wanted to go, and being committed to an outcome that would be better than if it was litigious, if it was conflictual, really is what resulted in an agreement. So it's difficult, and I'm not going to say that it isn't difficult, but it's so important to find those areas where we can have agreement and to really strive to define how even in the case of very different worldviews, we can find commonality. So I know maybe that sounds sort of philosophical and esoteric, but that's, I think, the approach that we pursue in Utah. Do I have any more? My favorite Ramones song? No? Nobody? Yeah. Boy, I don't, psychotherapy. And my daughter is getting a PhD in neuroscience, so I guess I could conclude with that. Thank you.